Clubhouse.
It's your home. Your family. It's the only one I got. We ain't gonna let nobody take what's rightfully ours.
Welcome to Pod Clubhouse's coverage of Dutton Ranch, the newest entry in the Yellowstone universe of shows. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Tonight we're discussing episode 6 of Dutton Ranch, A Cowboy Saint. Tonight's episode was written by Haley Tibbenham and directed once again by Jessica Lowry.
Just a community note, please join us on Facebook in the Yellowstone 1923-1883, the Madison and Dutton Ranch discussion and news group to discuss the Dutton Ranch and the whole universe of Taylor Sheridan and Yellowstone shows. Just a reminder, this is not a recap show. We assume you've watched it and we're not going to go step by step. But if you haven't, please go watch. Just put us on pause for a second, go watch that episode, come on back, and then let's discuss because we're definitely going to spoil it for you.
Hey, and as far as episodes go, this was a super fast one. So if you do need to go watch it, put this on pause within an hour. This was just a 40-minute episode, I believe, and it felt it. Like this went quick, and I enjoyed it. I liked this episode a lot.
Well, we definitely got to figure out what is Rip going to do with Azul and Zachariah. We're all wondering, like, what are they doing? I was loving them getting to do some cowboy antics, if you will.
Cowboys doing cowboy shit is one of my favorite things about Yellowstone. It's the people being good at their job, seeing people be good at their job. I love this stuff. And branding, tagging, doctoring, like we haven't seen this yet. And we haven't seen it actually going back into original Yellowstone for a couple of seasons even there. They really got away from the actual ranching business. I like the roping contest. I liked it without someone dying or getting shot or getting beat with an iron or a branding iron or anything. It was just 10 pedal guys and Dutton Ranch guys getting along, competitive, a lot of your mama jokes and sister jokes and dad jokes. This was a good group without the cancer of like Rob Will or Chet in there. You can see with a leader like Rip, and it's funny because we have Beth talking about how he's a leader and he's smart and he knows his business. Last week's episode, she's talking to Everett. You got to see that here. You could see what he does with guys who want to be led.
Also, I think that there was some good complexity added to Azul and Zachariah because we weren't really given any indication of what level of cowboy they were. And this was an opportunity to compare and contrast them to the 10 pedal guys. Obviously, they won. So that felt like, all right, we have good ranch hands. We felt we did, at least in spirit and in generationally being there. But we didn't actually know what their skill set was. We didn't really get a chance to see them much in action over at the Dutton Ranch. So it was nice to see them show that they have the skills and feel like, okay, Rip even himself must have felt a little all right, I got some good guys on my team. I feel good about this. It was good, team bonding. It was like a team building kind of situation.
This was without just missing the trust falls. And to your point, I like the fact that Rip was able to bring these guys. They're his guys. Not that he knows them terribly well, but they're still his guys. And he put them mainly in charge of getting the herd in there, but he was using Austin for the tagging purposes, but none of the guys really got their noses bent out of joint. I feel like what we had seen of the 10 pedal bunkhouse so far, with Wes running it for a little bit, but really mostly Chet and the way he was running it and being dysfunctional, you would have thought that these guys, Nico, Tommy, Guillermo, I'm just getting these from the closed captioning of names, would have gotten their nose bent out of joint that these Dutton Ranch people are coming to our farm and getting the good work. But no, everyone's just cool. Everyone's just doing their job and doing it well. I really, really enjoyed it.
And the contest added some trash talking and them being given a chance to sort of, team bond in that way of sort of being your mama, no, your mama. And it was fun.
Heading and healing is so,
It's so new to you.
It's so new to me. And just it seems like bizarre magic, especially the healing part.
Mike is very new to rodeo, to all y'all listening. And those who don't remember, I'm from Texas, I'm from Houston, from New York. And so we have very different experiences with watching all this.
Even watching it on TV, it still seems like magic to me. So I just loved all of this. I don't want to really spend any much more time on it. Three more things. One, I think the little horn wraparounds to protect the little cattle's horns is adorable.
For those of you who don't know much about rodeo and don't know like what we all think about the animals, there's an entire portion of the rodeo where we just salute the animals themselves. They come out and do their own parade with no people. They just walk out and everyone claps and they put them in the spotlight and they talk about the animal athletes and what an important part they are to the entire rodeo. So there is a lot of genuine respect for animals, and I'm glad that they showed that.
And I think it was a nice detail and important for the show, again, in the educating department, because I think that's a hallmark of the Taylor Sheridan shows from Yellowstone down to Landman and now this, to show that like they are taking care of these animals. They're not just fucking around with them. They're not abusing these animals in a way that's going to do permanent harm to them. They're taking care of them. Plus, not to mention that they're financial assets. I mean, these are expensive animals also. So I just like the detail of it. I don't think we had any idea that Azul was married and that he was having a baby. I mean, that was kind of like a bombshell to open the episode with, that he was building a crib. I was like, did we miss some pertinent information?
Again, I think we just did some good character building here. We gave them all a little texture, gave them a little bit more, backstory. And I guess for me, it showed that Azul has motivations for things, like, and I think that we could see him acting in that sort of new dad kind of way coming soon. Maybe it'll be in a conversation with Rip and him. Maybe it'll be in a conversation where he's maybe acting overly protective of someone or something, and it's like, oh, it's the dad like kind of vibe starting to grow in him. So I thought it was nice that we know a little bit more about Azul. I thought his wife was super cute and cool, and they seem like a very cool couple. You'd want to hang out with them. This
is where I have to put on my cynic hat, because I've watched too much depressing television in my life. One, learning that he's having a baby, and then the conversation that him, and I believe her name is Delilah, based on Process of Elimination in the credits, played by, I believe, Nayla Kantu. The conversation they're having about how nothing is forever. Because he's grousing that he has to go work at Tempetal to her before he grouses about it to Zachariah. And he says, as long as it's not forever. And she's like, baby, nothing is forever. As soon as they had that conversation, I was like, oh my God, something bad is going to happen to Azul before the end of the season. I feel like this is like reality show television. We got the package. We got the behind the scenes on him. We know too much about Azul's personal life now for something bad not to happen.
My theories.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's my reality show theory, y'all. Anytime you see B-roll, if they start talking about what their wife does or what their husband's favorite things are, and they show you footage from home, you're in bad trouble, because they're showing you stuff that's not happening on the island, not happening in the Big Brother house, and that means they're probably out next.
So my worry is that Azul will be
I don't know. Maybe it's not Azul though. Maybe it's the baby. Maybe it's because they did say like it's early to be building the crib, and so that was a little ominous. So yeah, we're gonna need to watch it. But again, maybe motivation for Azul if they do lose the baby because of something that happens that was preventable. Rob Will comes and starts yelling, and suddenly she's upset, and who knows? Who knows? But if somebody is the cause of losing that baby, well, now we've got a new motivation for Azul.
Well, you add that together with the comment that he makes to Zachariah, where he says, if my father would be rolling around in his grave if he knew I was going to work at Tempetal, even for this day. And Zachariah has to remind him, you've got a baby coming, buddy. Like, you got to do what you got to do. But without actually really addressing, like, why does Hector have so much beef and Azul inherited beef with Tempetal? There is a part of this story that we still don't know, which maybe not for season 1, since we only have 3 episodes left after this one, but maybe a season 2. There's something else here. Very interesting. I'm just raising it just to put it on the corkboard of theories with the red string. There's definitely something more here. Tonight's episode is called A Cowboy Saint. That is not a line spoken in this episode. And it's not a very well-known term. I tried looking to see if it was a term that I just was missing, that I just didn't know the vernacular of, and I couldn't really find anything. What are your thoughts on what a cowboy saint is?
I have sort of my own personal experience, and then I have what I looked up. So my own personal experience, we did bring up John Wayne in this episode, and in my experience, I've got 2 different professionals in my life. I have a doctor and I have a lawyer in my life, both of which absolutely love John Wayne, to the point of having cardboard stand-ups in their offices, having all types of signed memorabilia, pictures on the wall, the Spurs, all those types of things all over their offices. And to them, I know if I asked them, they would use the term cowboy saint. Now, there's nothing that I found online that refers to it in that regard, like a pop culture thing or someone within sort of cowboy lore in that way, in a pop culture way. However, we did find a cowboy saint referring to a cowboy with the last name of Gil, and he was apparently a legendary folk saint from Argentina. His whole biz was basically that he was like a Robin Hood figure who fought in civil wars, deserted the military to evade corrupt authorities, and stole from the rich to give to the vulnerable. I don't know if there is something going on with that. Are we alluding to this idea of stealing from the rich to give to the poor? Is the 10 petal the rich that Beth and Rip are infiltrating to, I don't know, somehow right some wrongs for maybe some vulnerable people in the whole town? Like maybe fix some things like the auction house or other things that are going on around town where, you know, things are unfair to the locals. Is that a possibility? I don't know. So we've got sort of a couple ideas of maybe what Cowboy Saint was referring to. Did you have anything other than that?
I like the Beth and Rip as the Cowboy Saint Robin Hood figure there, but I think if you really go back and listen to, we're going to play the clip when we get to that section, but if you listen to the way Beulah talks about her family's history, the Irish immigrant who in the midst of the Texas Revolution steals cattle from his ranch where he is working to go form and found his own ranch, Beulah describes herself as the hero of that story, or her family as kind of the hero of that story, who did what they had to, gritty and all that. So I think maybe from Beulah's point of view, you could argue that she sees her family as the Robin Hood figure, or at least at the founding of it, as the founding of her family as Robin Hood figure. Beulah thinks a lot of herself, and it seems very reasonable that she would see herself not as the oppressor, but the one who, you know, was oppressed and, you know, stole to free themselves from it. The other thing I just kind of thought of just in a general sense is the idea of the cowboy, right? A person who romantically is a gentleman and is trying to maybe live an honorable life, or as honorable a life as they can, the saint part of it, but they're still a cowboy. And we learn from Rip, we learn from countless people in these shows, good people do horrible things. And cowboys, especially cowboys in this world, sometimes have to do sinful things and horrible things. So there is this idea of trying to live as honorable life as possible, but also I'm going to do bad things along the way. So you're a cowboy saint in that way. Like you're living as good a life as you possibly can as a cowboy.
I like it. Who knows?
Who knows? Let's get to our first clip of the episode. This is breakfast, maybe the most awkward breakfast we've ever witnessed. Well, that's probably not true. Certainly the most awkward breakfast we've seen in Dutton Ranch so far. Let's take a listen.
You know, there's been a lot of change around here lately. But we're gonna get through it together. Like a family.
Carter, is there something you want to talk about?
I gotta get to class. I got a math quiz.
Love you. Fuck. We were fucking impossible at 19, weren't we?
Honey, you're still impossible.
You're welcome.
I like when Rip and Beth laugh together. Makes me happy.
I do too.
Rip, like my favorite lawyers in the world, doesn't tend to ask questions that he doesn't know the answer to or thinks he knows the answer to. Do you think they possibly know about him being arrested or about what happened to Dwight? Do you think they've gotten some information, especially now that they're at the 10 pedal and they seem to have all the information about everything, and they were testing to see if Carter would come to them about what it was?
I don't think they have information that exact. I think that it's very obvious that Carter's acting kind of odd, and they know about Oriana, and they know about the awkwardness sort of between Jacksons and Duttons, and that a lot is changing. You know, now they're going over and working at 10 Pedal, and so things are kind of awkward and a little up in the air. So, you know, I mean, Carter did a nice long pause there, looking all around, like acting like, "Rrr." So I think it's pretty obvious as parents, you can just look at him and be like, well, there's something he wants to talk about, but I don't think they know anything. Like, I think if they knew cops were involved or as deep as like actually what happened to Dwight, I think they would be pressing a whole lot harder. What was getting me in that conversation was the amount of side eye between Rip and Beth. It was like a tennis match. Like it was like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, even Rip was starting to smirk, like how many times are we going to look at each other? Because it was like that it was so sitcom-y in the way that they were doing that. I also understood it. It was also very realistic. I absolutely do that all the time. I'm like looking around like, oh my God, what's happening right now?
Well, teenagers can be such ticking time bombs, you know, and if they are just sensing something is wrong, which that's how I think I read it too. I don't think Rip knows, because I agree with you. I think if they knew the extent of trouble Carter has gotten into in the last several days and not going to school, I don't think he's actually going to take that math quiz that he says that he is, by the way. I think they definitely would have pressed, and with a lot more force. But the back and forth eyeballs was funny to me, because at the end, as soon as he walks out, Beth exclaims or exhales like a fuck. And you could see in her face before that, she's thinking in her head, like, what the fuck? What the fuck? This is so awkward. What the fuck? Like every time she glances to Rip, like, you say something, or I say something, you say something, someone should say something, because we're just sitting here awkwardly. It was comical. It was actually a nice bit of like physical acting that made it kind of funny. And I think any parent who has had an ornery teenager can sympathize with that scene too. Let's stay with Carter and let's deal with him and Oriana, because they didn't have a lot of screen time in this episode. So since we're already here, let's stay here. We hear Beulah say to Miguel she's extending the leash, and that Oriana's going to be allowed to go with that Dutton boy to go fishing. Caroline, you're my Texas expert. I rely on you for all things Texas knowledge. Do you know what lake this is? Because this is a huge lake. This is not just like the fishing hole. This was like a mini ocean that they were sitting on.
Here's all I have. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert at all. Texas is a very big place, and I've lived here most of my life, but only in Houston and Austin, so I'll only act like I know about those areas. I have cousins that live up in Weatherford and the Weatherford area, and I know that's where they're filming. So I'm assuming this is Lake Weatherford, which is a pretty big lake. I think it looks super huge to you because I did a little extra research. In New England, the average size lakes up there are 10 to 50 acres. So for you, what you would see and know as a lake is quite a bit smaller, because Lake Weatherford is 1,158 acres.
Oh, so a little bit bigger.
A little bigger, yeah. So that's where I think they're at, and that's what I think what's going on. I have to say, in the scene that just kind of transitioning from the Rip Beth scene over to Carter and them fishing, I thought the part where he asked, do you know how to fish, to Carter, I think that was a super loaded question. I don't actually think that was just about fishing, because they just caught him at home having sex and everything, and like maybe there was a little bit more like, do you know how to handle everything you're about to do today? Kind of question.
How to handle your rod? A wink, wink.
Perhaps. And so I thought there was like a little bit more to that question, and I thought that even Rip's like smiley face, like, do you know how to fish? Like, but his face was kind of like, I was like, okay, all right. So I thought that was cute. What is Carter doing wearing a long sleeve shirt and jeans on a boat, y'all?
He is the ultimate fish out of water, and doesn't seem, I mean, Dwight was the most natural setting he's had so far in this show. As odd as that whole scenario was, and we're going to hear about it in this clip right now, and how he feels about Dwight, but think about it. It's the only time he didn't seem extremely awkward and out of place. I had the exact same reaction to you, because the sun, that scene was so washed out, not in a bad way, like intentionally to show you the heat that they were sitting under. It was a crazy ensemble to be wearing fishing with the girl wearing the skimpy two-piece.
Even in the interviews, Cole Hauser is saying he lost weight just standing in the heat of Texas. Okay, so just standing out there, just acting, just doing those portions, he's losing weight. Like he couldn't be keeping the Rip weight on the way he does. The idea of being on a lake like that, which like our family has a lake house, and I sometimes if I'm laying out just like out on the dock, like after a very short period of time, and I'm wearing a bathing suit, I'm feeling like I'm getting heat stroke, like I need to get in the shade and whatever. So wearing jeans and like kind of even like just long sleeve shirt, that was wildly overdressed for his situation.
And they were not drinking water properly or hydrating. They were drinking beer. I'm a big hydration guy.
And I don't drink water ever, so no, hilarious.
I think you're allergic to it.
My mother died when I was 11. My father OD'd when I was 14. I never had much of anyone or anything till Beth found me. I suppose I should be grateful for all they've done, but somehow I just don't feel like I have a choice in who I am, what I do, or hell, even what I like.
It's hard to be thankful for that.
Dwight might have been a bad man, but he was good to me. You know? He talked an awful lot, but somehow he listened.
And he liked you.
Beth and Rip do too. It's just different.
It's because you're theirs.
I don't want to be anyone's anymore.
Then don't. Not even mine.
Two things in this conversation that I wanted to focus on. One, I think this was some of Finn Little's best acting actually so far in this show, and I found this to be the most honest, relatable line for someone his age to be talking about. Just in general, you and I actually have had a lot of conversations over the last couple of years now, because we both have boys in particular who have come through this age or going through this age and have come through this age. And this idea of there's a natural time, it seems, when even if you were super close, you begin to fight and pull away, and the distance kind of grows between, the teenager and the parents because of this natural idea of getting them ready to leave the house and this idea of making it easier.
Yeah, there's a proper name for it. I mean, like soiling the nest, right? So it's the idea that teenagers start acting like they can do everything for themselves because it's easier for them if they start sort of wrecking home and making it feel like I don't need this place and I don't need these people because they're about to head off to college or head off to a job or head off to trade school or whatever it is they're doing. And so they need to feel like this place stinks. I don't need to be here. I don't want to be here. And from a parent point of view, it's kind of the same thing. There's a push and a pull where you have to start arguing, you have to start disagreeing. And in that, you start fostering this independence. Like everybody's got their own ideas. Everybody can handle this on their own. It's a little ugly to be like disliking each other, but so that you can let go. If you stayed in that sort of like, honeymoon period of like when kids are little and they just love you and want to cuddle you and everything, you'd never be able to let them go. So this part is a really necessary portion. And we discussed this a lot in the last episode about Carter being sometimes a Muppet, sometimes man, sometimes a Muppet of a man. He is right in there. Like I'm feeling all of it in this one.
Especially the back end of the conversation of I don't want to belong to anyone anymore. Like really felt authentic to me and rang, and I thought it was delivered well. I thought the beginning part too of I know I should be grateful and I just don't feel it because he says my mother OD'd when I was 11. My mother died when I was 11. My father OD'd when I was 14. I had nothing until, Beth found me. I know I should be grateful. I just can't. I just don't feel that. Again, felt authentic to me. As far as we know, in the last 5 years, Carter hasn't wanted for anything. Yes, Rip was hard on him and disciplined him and made him earn his keep up in Yellowstone. And he had to learn how to do the horses and the stalls and all of that. But he wasn't going hungry anymore. He wasn't worried about where he was going to sleep or a roof over his head or clothes on his back. He's had all of that. But yet he knows that he should be grateful and he can't. Did this feel like natural, good character development or are we supposed to take away that he's spoiled and boo on Carter?
I guess just conflicted. Like he is in kind of a weird position where these are his adoptive parents, but it's very informal and very loose. And on one hand, yes, he wants to, be respectful of them and listen to them and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, he is 19 and he's also lived a whole lot of his life basically, on his own independent. And so the idea of taking this back seat and being this child role when he's been parentified for like the majority of his life, it kind of creates, I don't really know how to be grateful as a grown man to be treated like a child. He's having this struggle, which I think, again, like good character building. And I think fair to be conflicted right now.
I think if you're a watcher or you listen to our podcast, or if you're a watcher of the show and you've been struggling to get into Carter's point of view or understand the motivation, because it's not a typical character that we've seen other than like, say, maybe Elsa in 1883. I think this scene is maybe the single best entry point to get into Carter's point of view. I think that was the utility of this scene, was here is actually what he's feeling. And it's in the lens of now not having Dwight, the only person in his recent life that he seems to have understood him by not trying to force him to be or do anything. Dwight is going to definitely glow even brighter in his memory now for the short time that they spent together, because his memory will be, he didn't try and control me. He didn't try and own me. He didn't try and force me to do this, that, or that. He just let me be Carter.
You know what? Then I'm going to add on to the Cowboy Saint possibility. We talk about a lot in our family, the idea that when someone passes away, they sort of, everyone forgets all their flaws and they become like a saint in your memory. I very much wonder if Dwight has become the Cowboy Saint.
Y'all, we didn't even plan that.
Mind.
We talked about it beforehand, and Dwight did not come up. That was just in the moment. You just heard that.
Oh my God.
In
Synapses.
the moment.
Everything's working.
Oh, shit. I'm blowing my mind. I think it was very bold of Carter, dressed in his dumb flannel and jeans in the hot weather, not drinking his water.
It would be so hot.
So
I don't
hot.
even know how he filmed it like that.
I was sitting with an air conditioner watching this, and I was sweating, watching him sweating. I'm making sweating notions.
You haven't even been here. You can't even appreciate
it was
the
83
heat of
degrees today in Pennsylvania. Please, I know heat.
Oh, I do not care. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's hysterical.
To break out the love
It was
word.
91 this morning when I woke up at like 8 in the morning.
Nah, dog, nah.
And on a lake? Oh God. It's just reflecting all that heat up on you.
And the no water. Just the beer, not proper hydration. Anyway, He breaks out the L word.
I kind of want him to quit with the drinking, though. I gotta say, I don't need that for him.
He's becoming a real Beulah with his drink.
Or his own parents. I mean, he showed that his parents had a lot of issues. So, cautionary tale.
You can't beat addiction out of someone, right? Isn't that what Beulah says later in this episode?
Yep.
What did you think of him breaking out the L word to Oriana? But more importantly, how did you think she handled it? Because she didn't say, "Oh, I love you too." She just said, "I don't think either of us know what love is."
Oof. I think that he showed his puppy dog nature that is Carter, that is like the cute side of him. And I think she showed her hardened side nature that she's been told that lots of times. And I mean, she wasn't actually shook in any way. She just was trying to be careful about how to talk to him. But she wasn't exactly like sitting there like, oh no, what do I say? What do I say? She was just like, how exactly do I want to say it to this particular
But she could have been
guy?
Much crueler, and I guarantee you she guarantee you she's been crueler to other guys who have said that to her. But Beth's words in her ears, if you break his heart, I will break your face.
Well, maybe that's it. But also, I mean, I think she did recognize the puppy dog nature of it. And like, you don't want to smack the puppy dog with a newspaper in his nose, right? Like, so you're sitting there like thinking like, how do I kind of very coolly get out of this? What she said was actually a realistic feeling. Like, we're both young and neither of us really have great histories in understanding or coming from like really loving relationships or places that we know. I mean, Carter has Rip and Beth, but they are chaotic in their own way, not necessarily with each other, but the way that them just individually. It's not like you could point at them and say like you want to emulate that couple. Like that couple can be very chaotic. Like it would be, I think he would want a quieter, more peaceful relationship than they have to have, because theirs has been very difficult over all the years.
Yeah, he went from addictive parents to chaotic parents.
Yeah, who are awesome to us, but I mean, if you're a child, I don't know that they're the best role models, I
like that Oriana didn't lead him on. I like that she didn't swat him, but I like that she didn't just like placate him either. It would have been very easy for her to be like, oh, I love you too, and just, whatever. She didn't, though, and I appreciate that about her. This is like one of those areas where you see her maturity over his. I think a lot of teenagers would have just knee-jerk reaction, I loved you back, without even thinking about it, just because they would have felt the pressure to reciprocate that. In the aftermath of that, I want to call back to the first time they hung out. Remember when they were shooting guns and drinking beer in the field? When she returns him to the school, before he gets out of her truck, he says, can I see you again? She gets a text message. It's a text message where Rob Will is telling her, grandma's sending me off to rehab, and Beulah had sent her a text, come home, it's time for dinner. Her whole face changes and she turns to him, not meanly, but coldly, and says, Carter, I have a boyfriend, so that's not going to happen. Here, he says, I love you. She gets text messages, which now this time we don't see what the text message is, but her whole face changes and she says, we've got somewhere to go, wheels the boat around, and they take off. And that's the last we see of them. We don't know where they're going. I presume to go meet him somewhere, but we don't know. All right, let us shift over to Beth. There are a couple of interesting conversations, I think, that happen between Beth and Beulah here. And the thing I want to ask you, Caroline, and listeners is, at the end of this day, after the different things we're going to walk through, is Beulah impressed by Beth, or is she feeling threatened by Beth, or is it some combination of the two?
You're every bit as advertised.
Well, you get what you pay for.
I suppose that's up for Zane Nash to decide.
No businessmen like Zane. They make deals on the details. We win him, the rest will follow, so preparation is everything.
I've also found that it helps to bend with the wind.
He was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, started busting tables at 15, built his empire by 30 without inheriting a penny, without going to college. Zane sees what most people don't. So this helps me bend to that.
Bend away, Beth.
The first thing I wanted to ask you is the, sometimes I have found it helps to bend to the situation. Is that a subtle threat to Beth? On its face, it's just that this is how I approach things, different than how you approach things. But that feels too simplistic. Is there something more in this conversation? What's your takeaway from this conversation?
I mean, I basically took it like Beth comes in fully prepared with like several different arguments in her mind and all the things she's going to say. To me, what Beulah was saying was, my technique is more like being flexible in the moment, listening to what they say, and more improv, more like, let's see what they say, and then I'm going to act in the moment and just sort of bend whichever way that they go, kind of go with the conversation, go with the flow, if you will. Those are two different approaches. They don't have to be opposite to one another, I don't think. And that's basically what Beulah was saying. Like, if that's the way you like to handle it, okay, why don't you like do your thing? Honestly, in the actual conversation, I thought they complemented each other very well. But Beth, 100%, her preparation is what kept the conversation going. I don't think Beulah would have been able to keep that conversation going just by bending, with the wind kind of thing. I think she needed Beth to have like the scaffolding in order to be able to sort of fill in where she could with like, she's like the color commentary, if you will.
Right.
But Beth is the one with the stats and the figures and the one who's telling you like the roster and all that stuff. Like, she's the one who actually knows what's going on. And Beulah was great to add the color and add the stories and add the smiles and the laughs and all that kind of stuff. Without Beth, she would have been dead in the water because it was very hollow what she really ended up being able to offer. She didn't have the facts and figures. She couldn't sell it. She could just sort of like be like, yeah, and also this. There's a role for the color commentator too, right? Like, that can keep it entertaining, that can keep the person interested in listening to everything. But also, without Beth, I mean, she wouldn't have had anything to really say.
So as they're walking into this meeting with Zane, she remarks that Beth doesn't appear to be nervous at all, which I think belies or betrays that Beulah must be a little bit nervous walking into this meeting. And Beth's response is, we're going to lock this up in 20 minutes. I'm going to be drinking on my porch by sundown. Beth is so interesting all the time because no matter what internally is going on with her forward facing is just always unflinching badass. They should write books about her management style. Not that I endorse it whole hog. There is something very inspiring and impressive about how she goes in, whether she has the chips or not, whether she has the cards or not. She pushes all in without hesitation or any kind of flinch and any kind of tell. She does give actually a tell in this upcoming clip, but it's very subtle and very quick and very unlike her. But let's take a listen to, this is the second part of the pitch. Like you said, They don't get to the story part that we're about to hear without Beth having the facts and figures and explaining why paying a middleman is bad business and a waste of money. But Zane has heard all of this before. Like, she needed to say all that because that's the business pitch of it. What more could they bring? That's the second part of this. That's the color commentary, like you said.
Well, you've assumed what I need, but why do I need it from you?
The people who dine in your restaurants, they don't pay top dollar just for a steak, right? You know, they want a story. They want an experience. We can give them that, a story, an authentic cowboy story.
And I've never had a Dutton sitting across my desk.
Or a Jackson.
Your father was a legend, Beth. Tell me about the Yellowstone.
The Yellowstone will be written about in the history books. But the Ten Petal and the Jacksons, they're still at it. 190 years they have been ranching. You know, they arrived here as the Sullivans, right? Escaping famine in Ireland.
With dreams of full bellies and warm sun. Instead, we got thrown smack dab in the middle of the Texas Revolution. My great-granddaddy's great-granddaddy, Liam Sullivan, was dodging bullets and herding cattle for the O'Connors in Refugio. He knew that if the cholera didn't kill him, the Comanches or the war would. So, in the dead of night, battle raging on the horizon, he rustled a mess of his boss's longhorns and drove them to the Winter Garden. An outlaw, he took the name Jackson from the whore he fled with and never looked back. It's an opportunity to work with two of the greatest ranching families in this country's history.
Oof, that last part there. So you guys are going to recall from last week's episode when Beth is setting out her terms for coming to work for Beulah. You get me, you get Rip, you get us 5 years. I'm going to make you a ton of money. 5 years, we're out. We're taking 20% of the profits, and that is the deal. Not part of the deal is the Dutton name. Never part of the deal. You get me, you don't get the Dutton name ever, ever, ever. It's the only term she really put on, otherwise kind of being very open and pleading for Beulah having revealed the foot and mouth disease of her herd. That's a very vulnerable, you need me, but also I need this job. The only real term she puts on it is that you cannot use the Dutton name. You don't get to sell on that because Beulah says to her, well, we'll just slap Dutton on it. We're going to make a ton of money. Everyone knows that. It eclipses the Ten Petal and the Jackson name. So for her to turn around, what did you take from this meeting where she just wants to talk about the Jacksons and Ten Petal? Zane and Beulah just want to talk about the Yellowstone and the Dutton name.
Well, I mean, they're sort of the newer story to Zane. Like, I would think in his world, he's been familiar with the Ten Petal, but this is probably the first time he's had a Dutton sitting there. And there's more sort of like, I don't know, like you want to get the dirt, right? Like, give me the nitty gritty of what went on at the Yellowstone. So there's sort of more excitement, I feel like, about that family. I thought she did a really good job of deflecting it and keep trying to bring it back to what we're actually doing here with the Ten Petal and all that stuff. Like, my shoulders went up when Beulah said, like, you know, two families and everything, because that's not what Beth was offering. You know, she wasn't offering to put her family name out there like that. Like, she was offering to be management for the Ten Petal, but not like you're getting two families like that. You know, she made that pretty clear. So everybody said what they had to say to try to make the deal. And Beth didn't completely bend, you know, like going back to that whole, like, I just like to, you know, go where the wind blows me kind of business. She didn't. Like, she kept pushing the train back onto the tracks, away from the Dutton family and away from the Yellowstone. There was a lot of pushing and pulling there that was happening very calmly and in a charming way, but there was a lot of pushing and pulling there.
The tell that I hinted at before playing the clip, go back and watch it. Just as Beulah is saying, and you get two of the greatest ranching families in American history. The camera cuts back to Beth, and Kelly Riley does some great stuff here because her face doesn't change, but she holds her blink for longer than you would normally blink. So she really is just closing her eyes at this moment. but she plays it off as just a really long blink because she really did a masterstroke here of trying to get it back and keeping it back on the Jacksons are the here and now. That's who you're getting into business with. The Yellowstone is history, but the Jacksons are now. And then at this last moment, this is the last part of the conversation, they lock up the deal here. They're out to drink after this. Beulah kind of gets one up on her in the last minute. And just a nice little nod. Beth recognizes she got taken here with that little subtle extra blink. Really, really, really touched me. I watched it a couple times. It's just a great little bit of acting. I suggest everyone go back and watch it. How would you rate this meeting and Beulah's part of it, the way she told her family's story? How would you rate her and Beth's chemistry in this meeting?
I thought it was good. I mean, I think that because we know what Beth said at the meeting at home about where her boundary lines were, I felt more tension than, say, Zane would have felt, because I know that Beth didn't want to talk about the Duttons and didn't want to talk about Yellowstone. You know, I think she did a really good tap dance to try to, be cool about everything, but not contradict Beulah, not make things uncomfortable, not make it uncomfortable in front of Zane. But I knew that Beulah was pushing boundaries and making Beth feel a certain way in that whole, transaction. So, and, I'm Team Beth in this story. So I think overall they presented very well to Zane. They could do a ton of deals like this, especially to somebody who is even, less of an important person than Zane. I think that they would bowl them over in 2 seconds. Because they are two strong women. And again, they complement each other very well. They have a lot of the right personality traits, from like shooting from the hip to being like well researched. The way that they handle each other, I thought was really, well done. And Zane had to have been impressed, because he managed to continue that meeting. Whereas like at the very beginning, he was ready to just be like, I've already done this. Like, hit the trail, and instead it was like very like, okay, tell me more. So they were getting a lot more FaceTime than I think he would have given anyone else.
What I left out of that clip was all of the John Wayne and the Searchers and John Ford stuff. At the end of the story, he laughs. He leads forward. He's leaning forward as Beulah's finishing the story, like, and the whore took the name of the whore that he fled with. And he laughs. He's like, even John Ford couldn't have come up with a story like that. And she's like, John Ford visited the ranch when I was a little girl. He was like, no shit, like, like the McChesney Spurs on his desk, which just a little history. So McChesney Spurs, highly collectible antique Western spurs crafted by the legendary blacksmith John Robert or J.R. McChesney. He revolutionized cowboy gear by pioneering a durable, seamless one-piece forging method, and his iconic gal leg or lady leg designs remain highly prized by Western Americana collectors. And to answer the specific question in this episode, yes, John Wayne in The Searchers wore his favorite pair of J.R. McChesney John Wayne pattern spurs. He had his own John Wayne pattern, often identified as model 68-2. Little history corner for all you. All right, so they lock up the deal. The next picks up with them bonding, as I say in air quotes. I think Beulah is trying to lure Beth in with some vulnerability here, but it all feels very forced. Let's play this clip. I want to talk about what you think, if it's true what she says about the parentage of Rob Will, about how Joaquin came to be, and obviously the big bomb that she kind of lays here about Jamie. Let's take a listen.
His daddy died in an awful flood before he was born. Then little baby Joaquin was dropped in my lap. Yeah, by a ranch hand who, he got on the wrong side of the law. Aha! I was scared till that survival instinct kicked in. After that, I had no problem putting a bullet in the skull of anything that threatened my boys.
I understand that.
Yeah. But that's another similarity in our families.
What's that?
Taking in wayward sons. Joaquin, Carter, Montana's former Attorney General, Jamie.
Yeah, I don't think about him anymore.
Yeah, well, I don't blame you. I mean, but one has to wonder what really happened. Him gone missing after what happened to your father?
I don't think about that either.
What do we think of Beulah's approach here? One, playing on the daddy issues, talking about how the men in their lives have loved the soil more than their blood, bringing up the wayward sons angle, connecting Carter and Jamie to Joaquin. Was this a masterstroke here? Do you think Beth was caught off guard by all of this? What do you think Beulah achieved here?
It felt like a trap in a lot of ways. I mean, I think that Beulah was trying to act very soft and try to connect on this mom level. And in reality, I mean, if that's what happened to...
Mom level and daughter level,
Yeah, but also, like, if that's what happened to Rob Will's dad, as the audience, that was a real, like, what? Like, you're telling us he just died in a flood?
I'm calling total bullshit on that.
I am too, because first of all, there's no real good reason why Beulah needs to tell the truth about any of this stuff.
No.
The only issue is that she knows that Beth is friends with Everett. If she were to go to Everett and say, is it true that Rob Will's dad died in a flood? I kind of think that Everett would say something. I don't think that he would go along with a Beulah lie immediately, like maybe not even realizing that that was a Beulah lie. I'm not sure. There's something there that would cause some amount of chaos. So I don't know if Beulah would just straight out lie. But if that's the storytelling they're going with, that was a big, like, slow trombone kind of sitch, because we were all trying to figure out who his dad was and that it seemed like it mattered. And,
I think that was a lie. I think the way she presented Joaquin falling into her lap, the ranch hand who got on the wrong side of the law, that doesn't sound right to me either, based on if we think Mariano, Joaquin's dad, that we've put together just from the one phone call we overheard, that man did not sound like a ranch hand who fell on the wrong side of the law. He sounded like a maybe drug lord or some kind of man of ill repute business who maybe for sure got on the wrong side of the law. But Joaquin's story was also kind of different. He just said parents that couldn't give him the life that he wanted, which maybe dovetails into the story the way Beulah's presenting it. But neither of those sound right with the guy that we heard on the phone 3 episodes ago. So I'm calling bullshit on both of these things. I think this is Beulah's, I'm going to act like I'm giving something of myself to you to lure you into this trap that I'm laying, but these are not real things.
And obviously, it was just a means to an end. It was just a way to bring up Jamie.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's the whole thing, is like, let me tell you this stuff about my family, but honestly, I'm not actually telling you about my family. I'm just trying to backdoor you and actually talk about your brother Jamie. And see, I'm going to gauge your squiggle level when I bring up your brother and decide whether or not you have something to hide on this. Like, if you just slump your shoulders and be like, that was a terribly sad situation. Right. Or are you like, I don't talk about that, or I don't think about that. Like, like, what's your reaction? And I felt like Beulah was like doing like laser eyes at her to read her body language on that.
No visible tell, no flinching from Beth. Again, whatever the situation, except for that one little eye closed thing with the 2 ranch families, she doesn't flinch here. Here, she's on solid ground and she doesn't flinch. And it's an interesting way to end their conversation in this episode because of how Beulah kind of scumbagged her at the end of that meeting by linking their families explicitly to Zane. This was her still pushing, like, I'm still needling about the Duttons and your family. And Beth has made it pretty clear, I don't want to talk about them. And she says here, like, I don't think about them anymore. I don't think about that anymore. But obviously Beulah will not let this go. I don't think this is going to be the last time she tries to get this out. It's interesting she's being so direct about it, though, versus sleuthing. Because I think Beth would do a lot of sleuthing behind the scenes before she tried any kind of frontal assault on Beulah. She didn't really ask any of those questions. Beulah was just volunteering all of that.
Because it wasn't a question. It was just a way to talk about Jamie.
Right. But Beth wasn't trying to trap her.
No trapping in that regard.
Bring him up.
Just reading Beth's body language, because we just have to figure out, is she uncomfortable talking about Jamie? Is she sad? Does she miss her brother? Is she going to say something like, I have a private detective doing everything he can to find Jamie, and I won't rest until Jamie is found?
Or they'll never find him because I killed him and threw him in a train station.
or that.
Which came up, which was revealed, and the circle got wider towards the end of the season of Marshals. The train station is still a topic of conversation in Montana, if y'all are watching that show. You mentioned Everett a minute ago, so we got to go to the beginning of the episode. These two have begun fucking again. Wah, wah, wah. Everett seemed to be much more reserved about everything. I mean, the fact that he says, I think I'm going to sleep in my own place tonight, she doesn't seem put off or what's the phrase I'm looking for, or, dispirited in any way. She's just like, well, I'll leave the light on in case you change your mind. What's your vibe post-coitally with these two? Are they on the same page with where their quote unquote relationship is?
I was really quite surprised when Everett came around the corner. I did not expect him to have had a sleepover party with Beulah in a Freaky Friday situation. We had Beulah acting more like Carter and Everett acting more like Oriana.
Good call.
And everybody sort of doing their I think I hear my mom calling. I got to go. My ride's here. Honk, honk.
The horses need me. I got to go doctor the horses. I gotta go.
Like that kind of feeling. So, I was surprised. And you could watch Beulah again. Remember we talked about in the previous episode about how she had to fake him out about the horse, needing care. And that's why he needed to come instead of just saying directly. This time she says directly and he does push back and she is ruffled. Well, I'll leave the light on for you. It's clear that there is that uncomfortable, she can't just be yeah, whatever, come by, don't come by, see if I give a shit. She wasn't exactly like that. She was a little ooh, I got a little embarrassed there, Were you surprised that they're casually sleeping together? Did you think this was going to start up?
I was, given how they left their last conversation was, there are too many demons between the two of us to ever get back together. Well, apparently not for sex, though. So, I mean, based on the last conversation, this seemed to be a big jump in escalation. I think even more interesting is that she asks him to formally be her date to the 190-year anniversary party that apparently is being thrown to honor the 10 Pedal Ranch. We've heard this 190-year thing a couple of times so far in the series. It comes up actually in the meeting with Zane. It sounds like they're actually throwing a very specific party for it. So that's a very public thing for these two to show up together. It's one thing to show up at a funeral and then talk to each other afterwards. Here now they're going to be going as a date. I think that's going to put Beth on notice if she finds out, Beth and Rip on notice, because I don't think they realize how whispery Everett currently is being in Beulah's ear. I think Beth thinks Everett is much more of a confidant against Beulah than Everett actually is, allegedly or apparently. So I think that is going to be a big shock to her and maybe question whether or not she can trust Everett in a real way. He's the ranch foreman and she's working for Beulah. So I'm assuming they're going to be invited to the 10 pedal party. What do you think? Because you and I talked about if Everett was to get back in bed metaphorically with Beulah, would that affect how we view him as a trustworthy character? Now they're literally sleeping together and going to a party together.
Right.
Is this going to alter our view of Everett irreparably? Is it going to alter Beth's view of Everett, which she doesn't have a lot of confidence so far here in Texas?
I wonder if, in some pillow talk, there was a conversation where Everett said so, eventually, the Duttons are going to be asking about Rob Will and Joaquin and stuff. So what are you going to tell them? So maybe she even concocted some of the story with Everett, and decided what they were going to, say or how things were going to do.
He tells her in that scene because she kind of gives I got to go deal with Beth. And he says to her, I think you're going to find that you're a lot more alike than you think. He's trying to kind of defend Beth lightly to her in that breakfast kitchen scene. He seems that he is playing an advisor role to her as well as to Beth, which always makes me wary of someone who's playing both sides like that. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And the fact that it's Ed Harris.
And the fact that it's Ed Harris, who has never played not a villain in his life, I don't think.
He's always got the capability.
Let's talk about these losers, Rob, Will, and Chet. I don't want to spend a ton of time on them, but they did have two significant conversations. Rob Will rattles off this quote to Chet when they're doing drugs and drinking and flipping cards in the motel room. A weak man goes through life without ever standing up for himself because he starts counting the cost of fighting. That's a coward's heart. They measure their dicks to see which one of them has a coward's heart, if either of them do, and they decide neither of them do. They're not cowards. thankfully. What's the deal with these two? Before we get into the clip that I think sends Chet off to his death, what's your vibe on these two? What are we supposed to be taking for this? Because we're supposed to be getting something from their interactions.
The entire thing with the guns was crazy. I mean, it just made me feel like Rob Will was absolutely like out of his mind.
When that meth head arms dealer, he giggles like a total like meth head, like
that was like, so weird.
Yeah,
that was so freaking weird.
Wasn't good.
Yeah, no, that like literally, I think I looked around the room like, what was that? Oh my God, what was that laugh? I mean, it's very clear that, and even in this conversation, that Chet is on his heels. He has no idea what to expect out of Rob Will, and that Rob Will is absolutely going to manipulate him like crazy. And there's no chance for Chet. Like, even in this conversation, we didn't know if Rob Will was going to shoot both of them right in that moment and just take the bag of guns and walk out, or what was going to happen. But it's very clear, like, homicides are coming.
Do you remember when we watched that show, when we covered that show Next for Pod Clubhouse? You remember the guy who does, he's like a radicalized incel in his mom's basement? And the next like AI computer actually manipulates him into going and doing like the assassination. Chet reminded me of like that radicalized incel in his mom's basement. Like, he's so desperate for Rob Will's validation because he's so aggrieved and feels so put upon. Like, I did so much for the 10 pedal and they cast me aside, and you know, like, I'll make them pay. Like real loser energy. That's like Chet's whole thing. And Rob Will is just kind of manipulating his strings. Like, let's listen to this clip because we've got to, this I think directly leads to Chet's confrontation with Joaquin, which ends up with Chet being dead.
I knew you had fight. Knew you'd always have my back.
Always.
I know we ain't blood, but I like to think we're brothers. You're the one I should have had.
It means the world to me.
It means nobody understands what we done to protect this ranch.
No one will.
And no one knows what we do to hold on to it.
Anything.
Everything. It's your home. Your family.
It's the only one I got.
We ain't gonna let nobody take what's rightfully ours.
This almost is like romantic, the way they're responding to each other. He's like, anything, everything. You're my brother. You're the one I should have had instead of Joaquin. This whole episode is just setting him up for this moment. In that last line when he says, we'll do anything, no one's going to take this away from us, he literally raises the gun to Chet for him to take, the handgun for him to take.
Yeah, but honestly, you know, as much as it's obvious after the fact, I didn't actually know if he was just seeing who he came upon first, Joaquin or Rip, because I think that both of them right now, as far as Rob Will is concerned, are threats to their, whatever he's considering, like Chet and Rob Will's like legacy, dynasty, whatever. Chet is pissed at Rip too, you know, for getting fired. So I wasn't sure, honestly, as it was playing out in those just couple of minutes that we had, I was like, I don't know if it's just going to be who he comes upon first and he's going to shoot whoever that is, whether it's Rip or Joaquin, or if he's purposely looking for Joaquin.
I thought he was purposely looking for Joaquin. One, because Rob Will, yes, he had that one interaction with Rip, but he doesn't even know Rip's name from that interaction. So I don't know that he would be actively thinking about it. But listening to that clip again, where right before the scene between Chet and Joaquin, they're specifically talking about like, you know, like we're not blood, but I've always thought of you like my brother, the one I should have had. Rob Will's ire is focused like the eye of Sauron directly on Joaquin. So I think for him here, he is sending Chet out to confront Joaquin, and either Chet, who is an expendable, expensive, dangerous loose end, winds up dead, or Chet shoots and kills Joaquin and eliminates what Rob Will sees as his main enemy or main obstacle right now, because I don't think he knows the threat of Rip yet. I think Chet does, but I don't think Rob Will really knows what a Rip is yet.
Didn't we both think that once that Chet raised the gun and shot at Joaquin, and then there was a shot behind Joaquin and shot Chet? Didn't we both think that was Rip? I didn't think it was Miguel that was going to be there. I thought it was Rip that was going to be there.
I assumed it was going to be Rip, but we hadn't seen his truck yet. We don't see him until after Miguel kills Chet. He rolls.
I just thought that they. I don't know. Then why did I place him at the scene?
Because you knew he was going up there, but he
was like around.
He was supposed to go up to meet Joaquin at the house to have the drink after he wrapped up the roping. But he rolls up when Miguel is bent over Chet's dead body and Joaquin is there bleeding. That's the scene he comes up on, is like, you know.
Yeah, I totally get you. I guess maybe that was it. That I just sort of thought Rip was within viewing distance, even when we didn't necessarily.
Oh, I had the same thought. I thought he was
like,
going to be the one who took out Chet, but only after he had seen him, you know what I mean? Like coming up on the scene, but he wasn't there before that though. And it turned out he actually wasn't there at all. He shows up actually after that. Right. So,
but not sure as the viewer when the car was like zoomed up.
True.
You know what I mean?
True. Yeah.
So I had in my head like he could already be there, just like not seen by the other two yet, or other three at that point. I was making up a whole storyline, y'all, that Rip was going to be very involved in this part, and I was obviously was like creating whole scenarios and how Rip could be involved.
I don't envy Miguel because there is a ton of blood in the main driveway there of the big house. You wonder, even Beulah, who is pretty like roll with it, people have to die, they have to die. I think she's going to have a question about why there is a giant patch of blood in her thing. But I want to get to the conversation because Rip gets Joaquin in the car, says, "Oh, let's go fix your hand. You're not going to the hospital." He stops though for a quick impromptu interrogation, which I think he has been waiting for ever since Austin spilled the beans about Wes Ayers disappearing a couple of weeks ago. He finally gets to have the conversation he's been waiting for. Let's listen to this clip.
You know a lot of killers?
Enough.
Wes Ayers was one of our hands. He was also Rob Will and Chet's dealer. I don't know how long ago it started, but it spun out of control. Wes paid the ultimate price. Chet too, I guess. I don't know why Rob Will chose your land. If you ask him, you probably wouldn't either. He's always seen himself like the prince who never became king, so the kingdom be damned.
I want to know exactly where your brother is.
Sacred Mesa, rehab facility in Sedona. After that, I've lined up a job in Botswana. He will take disgruntled princes like himself to slaughter elephants so they can pretend to be heroic knights. He's never coming back, Rip. And if he does, I'll fucking kill him.
Tough talk from Joaquin there at the end, but I gotta ask you, because the first time I watched this, I was like, Rip is extremely menacing by barely saying like 3 words, but he says it so quietly with the gun in like the cup holder. Joaquin is just spilling his guts here. But watching it again, he has a very rehearsed story. There is a lot of words and detail in here about heroics and kings and princes and Botswana. Like, he had this story locked and loaded, waiting to tell someone, which then makes me wonder how much of this is true. I think some of it is true. I think some of it is bullshit. What's your feeling on this scene and how Joaquin spills the beans?
I was very suspicious of the fact that he's had this Botswana story. I know it makes sense if you put it together with the exotic game ranch story that they probably do have business interests in other countries, and that could make sense. He was very quick about the whole, this is where he is in Sedona. I don't know how to say this. I don't want to think that he like signed Rob Will out or something like that. But again, we were sort of going back and forth on like, do we think he can sign himself out? Do we think someone has to sign him out? And then Joaquin has this argument with his mom, and suddenly Rob Will is back. Like, that seemed very like, whoa, that's some timing, where like all of a sudden Rip and Beth are hired one day. That night, Rob Will's back, or like basically the next night. That's really convenient for Joaquin, who is like, I don't like the way this is going. what like monkey wrench can I throw in here? Oh, how's about a Rob Will? You know, I mean, I'm playing around with all these characters like, well, who could have moved these chess pieces and whose best interest is it if Rob Will comes back in on the scene? Does that actually give Joaquin more power if Rob Will comes back in? Because Beulah has to get busy with him and now Rip's busy with him. And things get all kind of messy.
Right. In a vacuum, right? Power abhors a vacuum, right? If Beulah is occupied with Rob Will, and Rip will certainly be occupied with Rob Will, he's only talked to the two Jacksons one time each. In both conversations, he has asked about Rob Will and his location. He brought it up in his interview with Beulah, and now his first direct conversation with Joaquin. Where the fuck is he? I need to know exactly where he is. Now, here's the thing. I think I've come around to agreeing with everything you just said there, because again, the way he is breathing heavy and he's shaking, the first time I watched this, I was like, oh, this guy is just giving it all up. He is terrified of Rip and everything here, and almost having just been killed. He definitely was shot. But watching it again, it's so rehearsed and flowery. There's so many, you can almost see him in the mirror being like, he thinks himself a fallen king, like almost literally rehearsing the lines, like the Botswana line about leading fallen princes to shoot elephants and think themselves so heroic. Like he just kept adding words.
It's very dramatic.
It's like very, like you can watch him in the mirror practicing it. He was ready for this conversation.
And you know, like sometimes when people add too much details,
yes,
and you feel like that just feels like too big of a lie. Like,
yeah.
He
well,
could
even
have
like
just
Wes
said
being the
he's
dealer,
in rehab. He
right.
didn't have to say
all of it,
all the things. You know, like he could have just said, "I got him a job out of the country." He didn't have to say all the things. Like,
right.
I don't know.
And he has Rip wrong if he thinks and if he shows up, I'll kill him myself. You don't understand Rip if you think you're like impressing him or something. When he says, he's like, I know plenty of fools, they're not killers. He's like, do you know a lot of killers? He's like, enough. He doesn't actually nearly appreciate enough. Like he never asks, well, what did you do with Wes's body? Like that doesn't come up. That feels to me, if I'm Joaquin, and be like, how did you get rid of that body? We went looking for it. Don't you think you should ask this guy you don't know anything about? Like, I think Joaquin thinks he is very impressive here with his dramatic flair. And I think he thinks he is going to intimidate Rip somehow. And that is just not going to happen. This plays into something I wanted to ask you about, because there is a scene that feels important only because they spend a significant amount of screen time on it in an overall short episode. Joaquin goes into the hat shop and asks for a Republic cowboy hat, an open crown style Republic cowboy hat, and he tries it on, and the guy says, most people let the hat wear them. He's like, I'm not most people, and he's like preening at himself in the mirror. What did you think of the significance of the hat and that whole scene?
It's the kind of thing you do when you think you're going to become the boss. I think you are trying to get yourself a handsome new uniform. That was the vibe that I was getting, was like, are we buying a new hat because we think we're taking on a new lot in life here? The whole thing about, kind of getting this very like what they were considering like a fancier hat and all this stuff. There was something about the whole thing that just felt like he was like giving himself his own little promotion on the inside. Were you reading it differently? I
read the same way, but I'm going to take it even one step further. And I think the evidence for your reading of it, which I agree with, is I think it has been burning in his ears ever since he confronted his mother after she hired Beth. Beulah says to him, "You're not a cattleman, Joaquin. Rip is. Beth is. The Duttons are legendary. They're going to do what needs to be." I think it has been burning in his ears hearing his mother say he's not a cattleman, he's not a cowboy. I think that is a lot of this motivation. Also, I think you're right. He is picturing the chess pieces. I think he thinks he's playing 4D chess here. He has not appreciated that Rip is his own chess piece that moves in every which way he wants to, and so does Beth. But also there's a bit of this where I feel like Joaquin is playing dress up as a cowboy, because he is not one. His mother was right. He is not a cattleman. He is not a cowboy. But this scene, the way he's preening at himself, like if he had blown himself a kiss in the mirror, I would have been like, yeah, no, that totally makes sense based on how he was acting. He's playing dress up, which connects back to Zane Nash a man who grew up on the south side of Chicago and is as far removed from the actual cowboy lifestyle as you can be, has classic McChesney John Wayne spurs on his desk. Another guy playing at cowboy and playing at dress up.
Let me go another one for you. Going back to that cowboy saint, Cowboy Gil, if you will, there's something here, though, where I feel like he is fancying himself the Robin Hood character.
I like Beulah. I think you're right. Yeah.
There was something about that hat that, again, like, I'm from Texas, and I would equate that hat more with like a vaquero, more of like a Mexican cowboy. And there's something about that. Maybe it's even returning, sort of going back to our Yellowstone. Maybe it's returning the land to who he rightfully thinks, you know, it belongs to, kind of thing. The shape of the hat and the brown color is not the same that you've seen on a bunch of these other cowboys. And you should note that.
I have been reading about cowboy hats, and you're exactly right. So the one that we think of, like that Rip wears and stuff, it seems to be called, it's like the cattleman style. This one is based on, it's actually based on, I think, the original Stetson model, which was called the Boss of the Plains, which is very interesting given your, he's looking for the boss talk.
And also sort of that South American Argentinian hat that I equate with, again, that cowboy saint that we were talking about, because they said he was from Argentina, and I equate that kind of rounded hat also with that culture. So there was something about
everyone's
all
got a
of that
claim
that
to the
felt tied
cowboy
together.
saint. Yeah.
Somehow that was all tied together.
I like it. I like that a lot. That had, I'd like to go back and watch that scene, how he was acting, and put it together with this conversation, this story he is spinning to Rip.
And hats matter. If you guys haven't watched Westworld and bringing the Ed Harris of it all, the idea of if you're a white hat or a black hat is everything. And the idea that Joaquin would choose a brown hat is a whole game we're playing here. So there's something, colors of hats in storytelling absolutely make a difference. So brown is an interesting choice.
It is. It's interesting that Zachariah wears a white hat also.
I think that's a purity thing.
Yeah.
That I'm going with that he's like a
converted to God. He
born
probably
again.
Used to wear a black hat, and now he wears
Maybe
a white
he did.
hat.
And now
Yeah.
and I think that's a born again trying to do his best, be a good person, even if he wasn't at another point. That's my best guess on Zachariah. And this is all, listen, I don't do the research that Mike does. Mike reads and reads and reads and reads. And I'm just telling you like culture around me and like what I see in like day-to-day life.
Just two last things before we wrap up here, because we're basically, this is it. We're done with the episode. One that we didn't actually make explicit, but we should, in case you guys weren't paying attention, or just to circle back to it. The new herd that Rip and Azul and Zachariah and the other 10-pedal ranch hands were unloading today was a whole new herd of head of Angus steer, of Angus cattle. That means that they are already immediately putting Beth's plan into action, because remember, the classic 10-pedal cow was a Mexican cross hybrid, a hybrid breed of cattle. Now, with Beth's plan to put 10-pedal in all of the high-end steakhouses and make it a household name, part of that was making it an Angus-based beef like the Edwards Ranch that the Dutton Ranch became, that has now been destroyed. So very interesting that plan is already being put into effect. That's what's coming off of that truck that we saw the Cowboys, the ranch hands at 10-pedal working on. So just keep that in mind. Curious if foot and mouth disease is going to make an appearance. I don't think so, because I think it's going to turn out that it came from 10-pedal maybe, or maybe from Joaquin's dad maybe. I don't think we're actually at the end of that storyline. The other thing is the last conversation in this episode between Everett and Joaquin. For whatever purpose it serves, I think it's interesting that Everett tells Joaquin that Beulah likes everyone as long as they don't get in her way. And Joaquin, without missing a beat, replies that Beulah is happiest, though, when Everett is around. So interesting for Joaquin, he's not an outsider, but he's not blood, as we've learned. So he is a little bit of an outsider, but he sees the change in Beulah when Everett is around. And it is different than her just having a smiling face with people who aren't a threat to her. Everett is he's in some other category. So very interesting. I think the question of where does Everett's loyalties lie will become a big theme in these final 3 episodes of the season.
I also think that we are following a fascinating storytelling trope of the veterinarian who sews up guys. That comes up in so many stories. I love this movie called Bird on a Wire, and it's with Mel Gibson from a long, long time ago before he was problematic, and Goldie Hawn. And I love this movie. If y'all haven't seen it, it makes me laugh so hard. I used to watch with my brother probably like once a week. Of course, he takes, he has got to go to a vet when he gets shot up. And that whole concept that, like, I don't know, probably you've seen mob movies and other things where going to a
or
vet.
mainline Yellowstone, they used to use the vet to do all of their doctoring.
Definitely. But it's a story well outside the Yellowstone universe is what I'm trying to say. And it's been around a very long time. The idea of we don't go to the hospital, we don't go to the law, we go to the vet's office and they take care of us. It's funny, and it also goes back to whenever it's like not the first guy that I've sewn up. We were getting another little winkety wink. Everett's got lots of different sides.
Just the fact that Rip knew he would do it without even asking him a question. He just because Rip knows, like, you bring him to the vet, like guys like us don't go to ERs. I think it is interesting that Joaquin, who holds himself out front facing to be a businessman in the 10-pedal family, not a cowboy, not a bruiser or a common cowboy ranch hand on the farm. He's a businessman, but even he says, I can't go to a hospital. How far outside the lines are the Jacksons painting that Joaquin, who has a legitimate injury, can't go to a hospital to expose the questions that would be asked about why your hand has a hole in it? It's interesting if an honest family that didn't paint outside the lines would be able to go to an ER, right? Mm-hmm. But we can't have questions asked about where's the guy who shot you? Oh, Miguel took him and is dealing with him. He's being eaten by the hogs.
That's not about not going to the hospital. That's about not bringing in the law.
That's about not bringing in the law. Though this is the first episode we saw no Sheriff Handy Wade. 3 more episodes to go in this season, y'all. Let's see what happens.
Oh, goodness. This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Thank you for listening to the Yellowstone Podcast, Dutton Ranch. If you wouldn't mind heading over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and rate, review, and subscribe. And if you do say something nice, we're going to read it on the air. So please do. We want to interact with you. We want to talk with you. Just a little shout out to Adam, who reached out to us on Spotify just to say, Mike, you do a good job on the podcast. Well, I appreciate that, Adam, and I appreciate you listening. And please, guys, definitely read and write and let us hear from you. What are your theories on everything here? Who do you think the Cowboy Saint is? Because I think we named 5 possible people.
And we thank you guys listeners, because we're number 43 on the Apple Podcasts.
Yes, that wouldn't happen without you guys. You guys listen, you guys keep tuning in. Our consumption rate is 99.6%. Full consumption on these long episodes that we do. So we wouldn't be doing this if you guys weren't listening. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.